Welcome to Charmed Life, a multimedia podcast discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I am your host, Tricia Carr. Welcome to this episode. If you are listening to the episode as a podcast, and if you are a regular listener, or if you've listened to it before at all, then you may have noticed that the intro was a little bit different. And so, yeah, there's a lot of fun, different things going on. And so it warranted some kind of new, something new there on the front end. And likewise, if you're watching, then you may have also noticed that I am in a different space. This is my very own studio. I had been with United Broadcasting Network for 3 years and loved it. I'm still a part of the UBN family in some ways. I'm doing my podcast here in my own studio. This is my Mystic Arts Academy too. You know, I hold small classes here and one-on-one sessions that I do in person. I do a lot of the work that I do actually remotely, but I also do some things in person. So the classes that I teach, I do have some of them where people can actually come. It's a limited seating, obviously, but I have a larger room in this overall complex too. So I can always expand if we ever choose to do that. But having said that, to inaugurate my new space, I have a really exciting guest. Her name is Elizabeth April. We actually visited in studio for quite a while. So this is actually going to be a series on Charmed Life. So I'll do some of this today, and then because we just went through so much stuff and it's so meaty and so deep that we decided to split it up. I encourage you to go check out Elizabeth's work, her YouTube channel, her Facebook, her website. She's a really powerful, insightful, inspired being, and we had a really great time. So again, like this, the content that we went through was pretty meaty. Kurt, my producer, was like, wow, my head's spinning. So I hope you guys have a similar experience in a very, very positive way. So let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth. She is an international psychic. She is a cosmic channel, public speaker, spiritual influencer, and an artist. And she's just really so beautiful, such a lovely spirit. In the time that we spent together, we talked about some of the experiences she had both growing up, which is what we will be showing today, and also going through this journey as she opened up to her purpose. In the episode content today, we are going to hear Elizabeth's story about how she grew up, but how also a past life regression prompted an awakening experience. I don't want to spoil it because she tells it better than I do, so I'm going to go ahead and roll the interview, part of the interview, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey everyone, I'm here with Elizabeth April. Elizabeth, what are your professional titles, or what are the kind of things that you identify with? You're very clairvoyant. I know some of the work that you do, and you're a speaker.
You know, it's kind of difficult to pin down exactly what I do or define myself or, indoctrinate myself to a label, Yeah. But paradigm shifter, that's what I resonate with, paradigm shifter. I'm here to shift things up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, how did you... I know a little bit about your journey. Did you have a big awakening? Obviously awakening is both, for a lot of people it's an event, but it definitely is a journey. Mm-hmm. Did you have an event? What did this happen like for you?
I had 2 major events in my life, I guess maybe 3. So I was born with clairvoyant abilities. I'm definitely not, a 3rd generational psychic or anything like that. But I was born with the gift of seeing ghosts and spirits and chakras and auras. And, and I was speaking to a lot of interdimensional beings at a young age, even though I was raised Catholic. So, I went to my dad at the age of like 5 or 6 and said, Dad, I've been talking to God, right? Mm-hmm. So here I am going to church with my family, and I sit him down and I say, I've been talking to God. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, well, tell me, what has God been saying? And I said, well, the church has it wrong. The Bible has it wrong. And my dad's like, okay, what's wrong about it? And I said, well, the Bible tells us that God is a man, but I've been talking to God and God's a female. God's a woman, right?
I love it. I have to tell,
yeah.
not to interrupt, but the synchronicity with that is, so I'm in hypnotherapy college, and I was in a workshop for doing NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and the teacher actually just said that. He was like, he was doing an example, and he's like, God, and he goes, I mean, that we actually know that God's a she. I mean, just so you guys know, God's actually a she, God's a woman, and we kind of know that, and from antiquity, anyway, let's just keep going. It's so interesting. Twice in 1 week, someone saying that.
Yeah, wow. So cool. So, that's kind of who I was as a kid, and I would go over to my friend's house, and I would see their grandfather, who, unbeknownst to me, passed away 5 years prior. And I'd be like, oh, your grandfather's here. That's nice. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, he's right over there. Yeah. You don't see him? And so I kind of grew up kind of having a difficult time fitting into school, being called a liar a lot of the times for seeing things that no one else could see. And even today, I mean, I get that all the time, every week, someone saying, oh, she's just making all of this up, right?
Comments on the trolls and everything.
Yeah, the trolls. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they don't bother me. They don't get to me because this is such an experience. It's so real. I mean, what I experience is more real than the table in front of me, right. So that's kind of how I perceive the world. But at the age of 10, I just wanted to shut everything down. I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to have friends. And so I decided to kind of shut down all of my spiritual gifts. And I remember consciously asking myself at that time, what could I do to be accepted? And in looking around and observing everyone else at school, it was sports, Oh, well, if I got into sports, then I would be accepted. So let's go ahead and do that. So I deep dove into, volleyball, soccer, rugby, football, karate, kickboxing, ballet, hip hop, you name it. I went into it. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Sounds really cool.
And then all of a sudden I started to have a lot of friends, and I started to be the captain of all of these teams, and I had everything that apparently a kid would want to have, and even though my parents were divorced, they were both happy, much happier actually. And but around the age of 14, 15, especially 16, I went through a really big bout of depression, anxiety. I was looking around at my reality saying, I have everything that a 16-year-old would ever want. Why am I still so sad? Why am I still so anxious? Why am I still so upset? Why do I feel like something's missing? And no one seems to know that something is missing. So it must be me, there's something wrong with me. So that's when I started to really seek for answers. I went to my teachers in high school. I, questioned my parents. I went to psychologists. I asked my doctor. And I didn't even know really what I was asking other than, why are we here? Yeah, and so there's this question of why am I here? Why are we all here? What's the point? What is the grand scheme, right? Because Catholicism, religion tells us that we're here, we make money, we have a partner, and then we die, and that's it, and it's heaven or hell. And that wasn't enough for me. And I got to the point where I even went to a priest, and I asked him, okay, tell me the answers of life. I'm ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And I still walked away disappointed.
Yeah.
So that spiraled me into an even deeper depression to say, wow, all of these people who I should be looking up to, all of my elders in my community, they don't have the answers, then I must be really crazy. And then my dad actually was the one who suggested a past life regression.
Wow.
So,
At 16?
At 16.
I actually wanted to ask you, so when you went to your dad and said, hey, God's not a dude, God's a she. How did your parents deal with your openness, your gifts, and your abilities? Because some parents shut them down because they're terrified. They don't know. Right. But I was just curious about that. And actually, Catholicism can be fear-based, but it can also be very open to that too, because it's kind of a sensual religion. It just depends on how someone filters things. So how did your parents deal with that?
So my mom overall, she's a younger soul in the way that she's full of so much unconditional love, and she loves me no matter what. But me seeing ghosts and spirits walking around our house at a young age really freaked her out. And she even told me, oh, you've been just watching too many scary movies. And that kind of tripped up my reality as well to say, am I just making this up? Whereas my dad, even though he was definitely the more religious one, he was very open, and he was doing things like energy work and Reiki on us as kids,
So cool.
And
your dad's so cool.
I know. I know. He would love that too if you said that to him. Oh my God. But yeah, and so he's an engineer, so very logical, very analytical, but at the same time very open in the oddest way. He's definitely an older soul. And he actually helped to put himself through university, engineering school, by doing past life regressions on the side.
Wow.
So even back then, he was charging, $100 for a past life regression.
That's a lot for that time period, probably. I mean, I'm
That
assuming we're talking about 70s or 80s, right?
Yeah, something
Still.
around there. Yeah, exactly. And so he was really open at such a young age. And then I think he closed himself off with having kids and a wife and those kind of things. But at 16, when I was really kind of distraught and didn't have any answers or really any directions to look into, he suggested that. And he was the one who gave me my first ever past life regression.
Wow.
Which is really incredible. So that was my first breakthrough. That was my first real awakening back into what felt most comfortable for me.
What do you recall or want to share? That first reading, what you discovered?
Yeah. So it was about 2 hours. And it's all recorded, which is beautiful. Of course, like traditional cassette recording, doing it old school. And so in that 2 hours, we went into about 5 or 6 past lifetimes. And most of the past lives were of me in all different genders, in all different cultures, in all different bodies, all over the world. And I was always in a position of teaching, of giving, of healing, of transcending and transmuting information and giving it to people. And the last lifetime that I went into during that experience, I was a man, and I believe I was in ancient Aztec or ancient Mayan civilization, and I was a shaman at the time. And the scene that I kind of ended off with was we were at the top of this pyramid. It was one of the flat-topped pyramids. And above us, there was a huge rectangle that was cut out of the stone so that at nighttime you can see right up to the stars. Wow. And,
amazing.
And there was all these kind of little flames, candles, I guess, that were lit all around. And I walk into this room, and there's about, I think, 8 other shamans or 8 other monks or whatever they were, but very spiritual men. And they were all sitting in this circle, and they were all sitting there, eyes closed, and they were meditating. And there was one spot in the circle left for me. And so I walk into the room, very dark, stars are so bright, and I sit down in the circle, and the second I close my eyes, my consciousness connects with the consciousness of the 8 other men, and we all connect our consciousness in the circle, and we basically get shot right into the center of the universe. And basically it was, you could compare it to ayahuasca or dimethyltryptamine being released in the pineal gland. It was like that, but because I was witnessing and seeing that at 16, all of those experiences I could not comprehend, and I just started bawling. I just started crying and crying and crying. And my dad thought something very traumatic happened to me, and it was really the opposite. It was the first time I understood, not only as that man in that past lifetime, that shaman, but it was the first time that I understood in my life, in this lifetime at 16, that there's a huge, wide universe just waiting for us to explore, and it's so much bigger than this room. It's so much bigger than you and I. It's so much bigger than this entire planet. And so it really opened me up to a world within a world. And I had such an awakening. I had such a breakthrough in understanding who I was, why I'm back on this planet once again. I also broke open my reality to simultaneous time. Wow, time doesn't exist. We can go into past lifetimes in the present moment.
And we can go into future and parallel.
Future and parallel, absolutely. Yeah. And that's mind-blowing. And then, of course, reincarnation. Wow, it does exist. Yeah. I've been here a lot, and we can actually receive that information from those parallel past or future lifetimes and really kind of bring it into this present moment. So that was my first major awakening. And at that point in time, I was so at a place of just happiness on this blissful cloud that I wanted to share that experience with others. So I started doing past life regressions at that age.
Amazing. And with your friends and stuff?
With friends, family members, anyone and everyone who could just listen or just be open to that. Yeah. I would say, hey, do you want to see something cool? And I would just put them into a trance, Yeah. And I would use my dad's old past life regression techniques to kind of put them into that place.
Would he use like the pathway prayer process or something like that?
I'm not totally sure what it was called, but you like go down the stairs and like you go into a very deep state, and
those are just classic, induction, hypnotic inductions. Yeah,
exactly.
We do a lot of those. Okay, well, there's just one called the pathway prayer process where that is fairly common for past life review or parallel, whatever you want to do. And so just for everyone who's listening, you can actually just look this up. It's a great way to start. I started that by using that, and then I didn't really need to use it again. But some people like use it, and then I know certain Akashic record systems, they use something called the access prayer. And so, you kind of like say this prayer. With the pathway one, then you have the sitter kind of recite a certain portion of it, and then you recite. So it's, it's very inducing, and it's a kind of incantation, and it's all just... Anyway, so that's really cool. Yeah. And so your dad just taught you some of those induction techniques. Yeah. And then did you start like your own, I imagine you started your own meditation practice, or even if you didn't have that word for it, because you're like, I need to be there.
Right. Yes. So, I kind of, I guess, started my career with the past life regressions, and I thought that was really cool. And then when I got away from home into university, I started to really open up, just because I had a lot more free time, away from home and kind of in my own studies. I had a lot more free time, and I started doing remote viewing, astral traveling, a lot of deep states of meditation. I started to heal my body as well. I was diagnosed, I went through a really bad breakup when I was 18. I was diagnosed with lupus. They told me that I had a good percentage, that it was a possibility that I'd be in a wheelchair by 25.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I ended up understanding that I allowed this DNA, this gene, to be unlocked within me because I lowered my vibration to such a level. And so, in understanding that I let this in, I knew that I could raise my vibration and get this out of my system. And it took me about 6 months to heal from lupus. And after that, all my blood tests came back negative.
Amazing.
Which was incredible. And that was a big step in my, evolution as well. But I think the second biggest awakening or breakthrough that I had came down to when I was 18. I went away to a 10-day meditation retreat. This was like the number one thing I wanted to do because I had done it in past lifetimes, and I was starting to remember and experience all of my past lives again. And I happened to be a yogi in Burma, and I could do things like levitate.
Oh my gosh, levitation is something that I have astral dreams. I have astral projections that my whole life about levitation. Do you think we're going to be doing that again physically, like in this timeline?
Absolutely.
In the near future? Because I've been asking, like, why do I have these? Why do I have these? And so much so that one time ages ago when my husband and I were still dating, and I said to him once, I was like kind of in hypnosis, when you just kind of like daydreaming, and I was like, yeah, I've levitated. And he's like, what? And I was like, oh, wait, no, I think those are dreams. But it's so real to me because they're astral traveling. So, So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt there because you said, again, synchronicity there.
Absolutely.
Levitation, I don't know. And I guess for me, I'm also kind of like, why? What's the point of it?
Yeah. So the point of, really when we think about levitation, we can think about telekinesis, right? So moving things with our mind and our vibration, but also turning things like water into wine, right? Changing the molecular compounds of the atomic world around us, right? That also means that I can take my hand and stick it through that solid wall.
Sure, and dimensional travel, and like where you dematerialize and materialize, and that you can actually handle it, because that's something we are actually trying to remember. That's why we have the internet. Well, the internet is about remembering that we're telepathic and telempathic and everything, but that we're non-local.
Yes.
But we also love physical bodies still, and that's a part of the experience. So I have a best friend who lives in Texas, and I'm in California. I can't travel to see her all the time. I can't get on an airplane, and that's so difficult for my body, but I feel like that urge, that desire to be with people that I love that live in different parts of this planet and different locations, that we need to be, that's what we're reminding ourselves of, is our non-locational kind of truth, right?
Absolutely.
So that's part of what maybe the levitation experience is about too.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really getting to this point where we understand that the material world isn't material at all, right? The physical world isn't actually structured. It's not solid.
It's not static, at least. You know what I mean?
It's not. Everything is a wave. And when I started to wake up around 18, I started seeing entire 80-floor skyscrapers in wave form. I'm like, why is that building moving? Is anyone else seeing this? And I started to understand that everything was just a vibrational frequency. And that really opened me up to huge downloads about quantum physics and those kind of things as well.
Well, like I said, pretty intense stuff, right? I love how Elizabeth kind of went through some of these things that were pretty big challenges and really was able to turn them in, go through them, and get on the other side of them so that they could become these really amazing lessons that catalyzed real change and alignment with her purpose. And I really have that same perspective too, or I should say, I've had a lot of that experience. For me, growing up, what I did have the psychic kid stuff going on, although I didn't quite really review it as such until I was much older. After I had kind of done my awakening, I contextualized it all inside evangelical Christianity or just being a quirky little kid. My parents actually did kind of not really, they didn't really, I would say, give me the pressure. They didn't really pressure me to not have my experiences, although they didn't really see them as such. They just thought it was a kid's imagination, and they played with me in it. So it was actually a way of encouraging it, even though it wasn't directly as in, encouraging it like, yes, these are true spiritual experiences. This is your extrasensory perception. It never entered into their mind. They were just like, yeah, she has imaginary friends. Sure, she talks with animals. And the thing is, I believe that both of my parents are animal communicators, interestingly enough. And my sister, at least one of my sisters, is as well. And so, that kind of stuff was sort of reinforced. And then, like Elizabeth shared in her story, that the natural progression of sort of moving into what kids do, getting, wanting to have friends, wanting to be a part of this experience. And that's how it all sort of started to just go away for me, because my priorities shifted to social environment, the kids and the friends that you needed to have in order to somehow have some success in this life. That's what it seems like to a 7-year-old, at least, I think. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old. But what I also want to share about in relation to Elizabeth's story of her past life regression. I mean, how cool is it that her dad led her in that? And I also wanted to just point out that if you are raising kids and you are, spiritually open and awakened, that really just allowing them, holding space for them and, not discouraging them, I think then you come out with some really amazing kids. Now, they still may go through their own thing where they actually shut it down themselves, but because you encouraged it, it will always be there for them. And when they're ready to rediscover it or enhance it again, then they just will. That's what I think. And actually, a lot of my friends who are parents, that's how they are working with their children, just kind of letting them have their experience as, because obviously we can't force anything onto kids, right? That'll just make them rebel because they need to become autonomous. And anyway, they're having these really amazing kids who are doing the work that they came here to do, because this planet, the vibration of it has raised, is shifting. And I believe that's why you guys are here too, because you're feeling your calling. And that may look like any number of things. Maybe it is that you are moving into being a cosmic channel like Elizabeth, or a medium, or a teacher of some kind, or maybe it is in the way that you run your vibration and run your frequency and hold space and love and help and heal in whatever it is that you do. So far as past life regression, I said I wanted to share about that. I have done past life and parallel life regressions, or recall, a reviewal, I tend to say. I call them parallel life reviewal, because really even a past life is a parallel life, because time is actually an illusion. The timeline isn't truly linear. If we're talking about being in the space of being able to look at different lives, well, then we've already popped out of the linearity of it. Because even if we're looking at a timeline behind us, well, then if we looked at it in the linear sense, it doesn't exist. So we shouldn't be able to even review it, right? We're already popping up and out of the line of time that we experience here on Earth. And so I tend to just I do say past life sometimes, but often I just kind of say parallel life reviewal, or just life reviewal. And I have done many of those. I do those myself. I have had one facilitated professionally. I have only had one. I mean, maybe in some other readings where I have a reading with someone, maybe we've done that a little bit, but as a full session, I have had a QHHT session. That's Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, which is the hypnotic technique created and developed by Dolores Cannon, who is now passed. Dolores Cannon is an author, and she was a hypnotist and really quite a pioneer in a lot of our understanding of our galactic place, because as she was regressing people just in that linear sense, going past lives, then people started to regress and experience parallel lives and start to connect with cosmic beings and star beings. And that just kind of blew her whole world open, as well as her whole practice. And so I've had a QHHT session, quantum healing hypnosis technique, with a gentleman named Jeroen de Wit, who has been on my show, who's been on Charmed Life 2 times. 2 or 3? 2 at least, I would say. So if you're interested in that technique, I suggest that you could start by watching those episodes if you haven't seen them yet. And the links are going to be in this description if you're listening or watching on YouTube. And you can go and find Jeroen, and he talks all about it. It's really amazing. And I had a wonderful experience in that session where we did do a past life regression, and I regressed to a past life that was in Lemuria, which is one of the golden eras of this planet where everything was quite magical. I was a kind of short and stubby dude. Wasn't as sexy as I'd hoped, you know. I kind of wished that I had been something really lithe and lovely, and I don't know, it could have been a man or a woman, but I was just hoping for something a little bit shinier than a Flintstone-looking guy. I seriously, the first thing I did, Jeroen was facilitating and guided me. I remember this very clearly, even though you kind of forget things in sessions. Certainly in hypnosis, there's a lot of in intuitive reading and channeling and all of that is actually in the state of hypnosis. So in hypnosis, there, just like in the dream time, there's a lot of amnesia. But I remembered this really clearly. I mapped it to that conscious mind. I landed on the ground where we were going, and I looked down, and I had these short, stubby legs and feet that were kind of covered in hair. And I was like, oh. No, I'm just kidding, though. It was really wonderful, and I was actually quite a different personality than I am now, which I find really interesting and exciting. Some of the kind of things that we can discover because they're just facets of what we do now. In that Lemurian life, I was sort of a patriarch. I would say I was patriarchal in the sense that I was sort of a male who was kind of one of the leaders, or the leader. It really felt like I was the leader, but I was actually childless. So where patriarch means father, and I wasn't actually a father. I was a childless, partnerless person. Kind of. I was more of an mental type, but it was definitely physicalized as well. And it was very much about earth medicine and earth healing and also crystal healing. It was very much like it felt very much like leprechaun energy to me. So it was very magical, but I was also very tacit. So I wasn't as, like talkative, and I was very much one who was a bit more on the intellectual side, albeit very spiritual, not just totally like over intellectualizing, but I was one to stand back and watch, and my counsel was quiet and grave, but also very intentional with the small community that I was a part of. So I gained a lot of insight about how I kind of use that now, but it may not be the face that I bring forward to most of the people who know me or see me, especially not if you see me on this podcast. So anyway, we did that in my QHHT session, and then I think this is the typical format of QHHT. We went further and we regressed beyond that life. I mean, like before that life. And then we did a life between life review, meaning that I actually sat there and experienced and watched how I created my own soul, or my own multidimensional consciousness, to come and create this life. It was actually this life that we went to. And it was really, the life between this life, the time before this life. And it was really amazing, really mind-blowing. I believe I've shared a little bit of it on this program before, but essentially I'll tell you the way that it broke down for me. It was sort of like this area that seemed like nothingness. It was just all energy. But what kind of grounded it was an image of a table, basically, that seemed to be made of like selenite or something. You know what I mean? It was a very shiny, slick, beautiful, brilliant, but very alive. The crystal, the only thing that seemed animate or, formed to actually give me something with my mind to grasp, or my subconscious mind, was this very alive crystal. And it was anchoring and conducting the space and the work that was being done. And so if you think about it almost like a boardroom, even though there was just nothingness, it was just white or clear or the absence of everything, but it was light. And I was sitting being at the head of what would be kind of like if you were in a boardroom and there's a person sitting at the head of the table, and then there are all of the people around it. Well, it's like that, only it was more, if it were a location, just it was spherical, and there were beings coming in and out, consciousnesses. And they included, well, my mother. Actually, my mother's essence was there, her soul, her energy, but then all kinds of other. And it all seemed to be kind of happening within the energy of Archangel Ariel. And so that was an overarching, all-encompassing energy. And then there were interdimensionals like cosmic beings, star beings, Pleiadians, and so forth. And then there were other archangels and just other, I can't remember all of it at this time, but other beings that maybe I have known in this life that seemed familiar, but also just ones that were familiar, but I don't know why, as it concerns this life that I live right now, incarnate. And what would happen is we were all standing around, and it was like a vortex of energy, like a whirling energy, like a whirlpool, but it was made entirely just of energy or light. And I would sort of present to myself, but in the witness of all of these different beings who would come in and out, a divine intention. And then I would receive the counsel of the many different consciousness, the many different beings who were there. And as I received the counsel of Archangel Gabriel, then as Gabriel informed on that, the energy, the intention of the energy that I was putting forward became a different energy. And Gabriel infused his counsel or his intention, like literally a part of his energy, into that. And then that went into this vortex, which was the multidimensional consciousness or soul that was going to be dispatching my life and eventually make my physical form. And as we did this, so I'm seeing this whirling pool of energy. And every time that I received counsel, but I was still the one who made the decision. And, this free will complex, this being was to be the one who received the counsel or the energy, the literal energy, and put it into this whirling vortex of energy. And so what this meant was that this was literally becoming me. So the energy, let's say Archangel Gabriel that I received, or the Pleiadian, it is a literal part of me, and it is what creates me. And as we continued in this between life experience, the vortex of energy, it's not that it ever ends, it's never static. It continues to be created in every single eternal now moment, including this one. But when it was time to allow it to start to execute the consciousness that eventually, that silver cord that executes a physical form, we took that, and then along the way, it was kind of also being compared to context. So this isn't a timeless space. So the context, as these divine intentions were being created, not set as in set forever, but sort of, manifested and, just like set in a way that was very dynamic, then it was being considered what context would do the best to bring it forward, and the context being a time-space reality. And so we took this vortex of light and essentially chose the time and place, the family, the people, and my mother, obviously, like I said, I recognized her energy there, and her energy was to be in that space. And, that's how we decided on the earth at the time that we did and the place that we did, with the other beings of my soul group who also contributed. And then from that vortex, which is basically an expression of source energy as it goes down through the tiers, was offered to the soul vortex energy of Gaia, which is the archangelic energy that creates the earth. And then like two energies coming together with this pressure, these two opposing vortices, then that brought the elements, the physical elements and everything else to create my physical form and to begin my incarnated life. So that's one thing that I learned from a past life regression, but also even deeper than that, this was a life between life. And the other times that I've done it, so that was one that was facilitated. But I just want to encourage you guys, you can do it yourself. As I mentioned with Elizabeth, there is something called the Pathway Prayer Process, and it's just a PDF that you can download. So you could do that and you can facilitate yourself in that way. But I don't even use that anymore personally. I actually, when I want to review a life, whether it's past, parallel, or future, then I go into meditation. I set that intention in advance, and then I just allow the visions to come as they would. And actually, just this morning, in honor of releasing this special broadcast, and just as I was inspired to, because I've been having a lot of shifting going on, I regressed, I guess you would say, myself, but this one was really more of a parallel life, and because it is a cosmic elven being that it's basically like as I understand it, something to the degree of a Palladian-derived cosmic being, but works with manifestation. Stay tuned. I'll see if I can articulate this better. But it's actually a council of 5 that I'm a part of, and the 4 who are the others on this council, I have been connecting with for about the last, I think, 6 months. They actually helped me they inspired and channeled a few classes that I've done in my Mystic Arts Academy, and also informed a class that I did, a workshop that I did at the 2019 Bliss Retreat, the Lightworkers Lab Bliss Retreat. And we're just interdimensional beings. I'll just leave it at that. And that's what we are doing. We are working on magic and instant manifestation, and it's just something that I needed to understand for my tuning right now. I've also done regressions where they were a bit more classic, where they just go in a past timeline as compared to this, 2019 timeline. And one of the times that I wanted to go and I actually take an intention. I'm like, I'm having a bit of frustration. It doesn't even have to be that strong, but I really feel like it's time for me to view some kind of life, a part of my energy that would be essentially, it turns out to be a metaphor, even though it's a literal thing that is an experience for me. But it can kind of be a metaphor for what's going on now. And you have a little more objectivity because you aren't having the domestic blindness and the things that you have going on right now. It's like when you watch a movie and you're like, oh my gosh, that inspired me so much, because it's someone else's story, and therefore you can be a bit more relaxed and receive the suggestions that are related to your highest good. That's what I see the past or parallel life benefits, some of the benefits. And so one of these kind of more classic, literally past, as though it was in a different timeline, I went back in time and experienced myself as Clara Schumann. Clara Schumann is the name of a woman who lived in, when was it? The 18th century. And she was, I may have the date wrong. I'm trying to think of the classical era. She was the wife of the famous classical composer named Robert Schumann. And Clara herself was a composer. And what's interestingly, my husband is a composer. And actually the irony of that, my husband in this life, Brian Carr, is a composer. And it didn't really dawn on me until after I'd come out of the session and I was journaling and making some notes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was the wife of a composer. That's hilarious. It didn't seem obvious to me while I was in the actual experience. But I really got to see some of the things that Clara went through. And I had some verifiable details about it that I didn't know about Clara. I went and looked them up because I was like, oh, I'm just wondering if I could get evidential details by having this connection. And so I kind of asked Clara at what age she passed. And I got both her age and also Robert's age when they each passed. And then I went on Wikipedia and found it. Now, some person, a skeptic, would say, well, you picked up that information and you had it subconsciously. I don't know, maybe, but, I have so much experience in doing mediumship readings and intuitive channeling and all of that kind of stuff that I don't even need to go to the skeptic side, because I know that when I do readings and things come through that I could not possibly have known, like, your Uncle Herbert is here, it's kind of out there, or other details that I couldn't have come across with a stranger, then, I'm going to go ahead and just take it as it is. And so I learned some lessons because it was a harder time for Clara then than it is now, considering that there was much more oppression and she had a lot of professional frustration because there weren't any female composers. And she was also taking care of her husband because he was ill. And so just some of the challenges of being an artist and a brilliant person that she was. I'm not saying I'm a brilliant artist. I mean, maybe I am. If you want to say that, it's okay, but I'm not saying it. But I'm just looking at some of the challenges that she had helped me to see themes that I was experiencing right now. And I relaxed. Actually, what it did, the information from that one specifically, got me to come really present, to relax and realize the value of what I have here and now, what I am already creating, and to just slow down and do the pacing that is being offered, both by myself as the one who is creating this life and by the field who is co-creating it with me. So past life regression or parallel life regression is an awesome and very helpful tool, very helpful modality. You can do it yourself. I encourage you. You have a meditation practice, if you want to try that pathway prayer process, or if you just want to set the intention and go into your meditation, you will find out some really cool things. You can just leave it open-ended, or you can also set an intention about a particular topic. That's what I do often. I'm feeling like I could use some guidance on this thing, and then just be open, and you have to affirm everything that you're seeing, because as it unfolds, just like dreams, it's almost identical to dreams and how it can be informative. But, as you're going through it, you want to stay very deep in your state and allow it to unfold as it will. Because if you kind of pop out and get conscious and say, that doesn't make any sense, that's not very cool, like me with my Flintstone legs, then you will possibly miss the really cool things in the unfolding. And also, if it seems not really cool or not very interesting, or what could this possibly mean, then that can be a really good sign that you're onto something, because it means that you're not creating a fantasy that you are forcing, and instead you are actually reviewing information in your Akashic experience. Well, this has been a really fun episode. So I have a lot of really exciting things coming up. I have exciting guests coming in. And as always, you guys mean so much to me. I really appreciate you sharing this and engaging with the podcast feed or the YouTube channel. And stay tuned for more Elizabeth April too, because we've got some really bonkers, powerful, awesome stuff coming up. So thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are. Hey guys, it's Tricia Carr. I have new exciting things going on with my Mystic Arts Academy. You can now subscribe to receive all of the live monthly content for about a third of the investment of a single class. Included are at least one downloadable guided meditation per month, 2 live events ranging from classes, channeled messages, group readings, intuitive development guidance, Q&A sessions, and tons of community. You'll also have access to a private Facebook community for fellowship and support, and this space is kept super sacred and high vibrational. Your subscription gives you access to the whole library of classes and live events, which are on a vast array of topics. All events are offered online by Zoom video call, and many are also offered live in person at my studio here in Los Angeles. Subscribing to the Mystic Arts Academy is also a way for you to support the Charmed Life podcast and engage on a deeper level. I'm offering the subscription at a super low rate of $22 a month. Joining now locks in this rate for as long as you're subscribed. Click on the description of this episode or go to my website,